chapter 5, verses 13 through 20, which, if you know anything about me, you will know that this is one of my favorite passages. And when I tell everybody to shine, and I tell everybody to shine bright, it comes right here from Matthew. So, Matthew chapter 5, beginning at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. But you are the light of the world. A city built on a hill can't be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket. No, instead, they place it on a lampstand and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth have passed away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. This is the gospel of the risen Christ. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
I know Sarah has taken Jackson and Nolan through to Worship and Wonder and back there, but I want to say, Jeff, and to the rest of the family, what a joy it is to have you back here in the congregation. I'm truly delighted that you brought Colton this morning for baptism. And we've all played a part in him joining the Church Universal. Last month, after the baptism that we had, I was asked by somebody about the candle that was presented, and then generally about candles. So not wanting to pass up a teaching moment, let me just share with you what we said. Part, of course, the candle that was presented to Colton this morning, you heard those words being said, let your light shine. So let your light shine, that people may see your good works, which is, of course, part of what we heard in the gospel. The candles which we have at the front of the church, the pair of candles, are there as symbols of Christ present within us. You see every Sunday, our acolyte presents the candle light, brings the light in, lighting first the large candle and then these two candles, and then at the end of the service, these two candles are extinguished, and then we take the light from the large candle and carry it back out. The symbol is the light coming in, the presence of Jesus coming into our worship, and then taking that light, taking the presence of Jesus back out into the world. We have two candles to remind us that Jesus was both man and God. So two candles are lit for that purpose. And then the large candle, which is next to the baptismal font, is called the Christ candle. It's dedicated each Easter Sunday morning every year and becomes part of that ritual of being lit, not just for the period of Easter, but at special occasions as well. So a special occasion such as a baptism, it is lit, and it is from the Christ light that we take the light of the candle and present that to the child and to the family. It is from the Christ light that we receive the blessing, as it were. If you've been to a funeral here, you will have seen that on occasions when we have the casket present in the sanctuary, we bring the Christ candle to the head of the casket. And it's lit. Sometimes if the casket comes in the night before, it is lit and it stays lit throughout until the service the following day. There are, of course, some churches where lighting the candle is a difficult thing. I remember as being a student minister. I may have told this to you before, going to one small church where I lit a candle on the start of the service, put it on the communion table at the front, and as we sang the first hymn, a gentleman walked from the back and blew the candle out. So being a student, I decided I'm going to do this again. So I went and lit it, and lo and behold, the minute I'd lit it and turned and walked back, he came down and blew it out. It seemed to be a fruitless exercise to keep that going. But the Christ candle is a symbol of the saving power of Christ present in the world. And I just want to spend a few minutes this morning reflecting on that theme. I was looking for information about lighthouses, because it struck me that a lighthouse is the same sort of properties in one sense of the saving light of Christ. And I came across the great story that there is of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Partly because I know it from a Gordon Lightfoot song, and didn't realize that it was actually taken from something in history. So popular culture informing history, or history informing popular culture. But apparently Lake Superior in November is not the best place to be. It's got pretty big waves, it was pretty dark, and on that particular occasion, when the Edmund Fitzgerald went out carrying iron ore, it met with a huge squall, a huge wind, and ended up capsizing, and 29 crewmen were lost, and they have to date never been found. In 1905, a particularly fierce Canadian northwestern swept across Lake Superior, the storm of the century as it was put in their local newspaper, and it wiped out 29 ships alone, leaving death and destruction in its wake. And it was at that point that the Split Rock Lighthouse was commissioned. It was commissioned on a cliff near Beaver Bay in Minnesota, and the lighthouse was completed in 1910, sporting a vast rotating clamshell lens with 242 prisms. Its bright light, white beam could be seen 22 miles away. It illuminated the entire landscape, the town, the cliff, the sea. It was built upon a cliff, and the light became a beacon of hope to all who were crossing, and it has saved thousands of lives. And it's that saving nature of light that best describes Jesus as a metaphor. And he talks about us being the light of the world. Will you pray with me? Illuminating God, help us to be the masters of ourselves, that we might truly be the servants of others. Take our minds and think through them. Take our lips and speak through them. Take our hands and do your good works. Take our lives and live out your life. Take our hearts and set them on fire with love for you. Amen. And so in that scripture which we heard today, Jesus uses several metaphors to describe what it means to be a follower, a member of God, present and active in the world. And one of those is a brilliant, bright light. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. But the light in Jesus' metaphor comes not from one's own self or some internal or even external physical source, but comes, as it were, from the glow of God illuminating in the Spirit from within. When Jesus lives in your heart, your face shines, and everything you say and do feels warm and inviting. Just as Moses' face was said to shine as he came down from the mountain after communing with God, so our faces, in one sense, shine when we allow God to illuminate us from the innermost soul. Jesus' presence in our lives and hearts is something like installing that high-powered lens on the flesh of our heart. The lens not only warms our hearts and softens our spirit, but it infuses with such love and caring for others that we can't but help show it. And show it in a way that is both outwardly gratifying, but also is educating. The light of God is not only an illuminating light, it's a saving light. It's meant to save others from the darkness in which they dwell and give hope to the lost and to give guidance to those who are confused. Too often in our world, we take Jesus' words and simply try to emulate his message in a physical or a political or an economic platform. And Jesus' disciples did exactly the same thing. For them, it was extremely hard to separate the illuminating spectacle and the beauty of Jerusalem and its temple, because that was their symbol of light and hope. Was that what Jesus was describing? A light that comes from God reflected in the hearts of his followers. After all, the temple's restoration marked the entire meaning of Hanukkah, the restoration and relighting of the temple's oil-lit lamps after the Maccabean revolt. The temple had always been a symbol of illumination and identity, but Jesus means it to be so much more. In 1630, preacher John Winthrop described his excitement for the proposed new Massachusetts Bay colony in a sermon that he wrote on the ship's journey to the new land. He hoped that the colony would be a city on a hill, that it would be different, as it were, from the rest of the world in its call to walk in the way of God, as the prophet Micah would say, and suggested developing an inclusive, loving kind of relationship. Since then, many politicians and others have used that phrase, city on a hill. It's used sometimes to describe America itself as a beacon to others. But Jesus' original intent had nothing to do with a physical city, nor anything to do with Jerusalem, or indeed to do with any country. For Jesus, the light, his temple, was not physical and spiritual. We are the lights. We are living stones built upon the cornerstone of Jesus, and he provides the light. In a sense, we all fit together in a spiritual community that we build upon the foundations of Jesus' life, his sacrifice, his death, and his resurrection. But just as in the metaphor of the split rock lighthouse, the true value is not in the building itself, but in the light. The book of Revelation, at the very end of our Bible, has an angel providing a vision of the city of God descending from heaven into a cliff-like mountain, illuminated entirely not of its own, but by the light of God. The entire landscape, the city and those within it, are lit by God's holy, energizing, healing, and redeeming light. This is the kind of light that Jesus wants us to be. Not simply that we go around doing good things, although good things are always good. It's not merely that we worship Jesus and proclaim him the light to others, but that by our words and by our actions, we embody the light. We are called to allow Jesus into our very hearts, to allow him to infuse us with that warmth, that light, a fire and energy, a brightness, a hope, so bright that it encompasses everything in its wake. When others look at someone infused with that love and the saving power of Jesus, they may not be able to put their finger on it, but they can tell that something is different. People with that like glow, with a kind of radiance that makes people want to be around them. They radiate that joy, that peace, that love, that kindness, the fruits of the Spirit in a way that can't be contrived. But to do this, we need to be open to Jesus. We need to stand before him, as it were, naked in all our vulnerability and allow him to turn our heart of stone into a heart of flesh. What has been done for Colton today by Sarah and Jeff is a beginning, an entry into the life of the Christian faith. There will come a time, I hope, that like his brothers Jackson and Nolan, he will make the decision for himself to confirm that which has taken place today. That he will find within his own life and soul a meaning that is linked to something greater than himself. To not only that power, but that warmth, that light, which lights the path before us. The Old Testament in the Psalms tells us that God is a lamp to our feet, guiding our journey. You know, as a young boy, I remember going with my parents into a big cave system. I know I may have told the story before, but it's one that always impacts me when I think about light. As we toured this cave system that had been, as it were, commercialized because there were pathways to follow, there was lighting to have, I noticed that everywhere there was a light attached to the stones, the walls, there was green moss growing. Nowhere else, not in any other place, but by that light source, green moss would grow. The light providing the energy for growth in an otherwise barren area. And for us, that is the same. For our lives, if we align ourselves to the true light, if we take that candle light into the world, then not only will we grow, but we will show others how to love and how to live. Amen. Now let us pray. Loving God, as we gather and leave this place now, we do so in the knowledge that you are indeed present with us. It is your strength that will support us. It is your comfort, your love that will comfort us, and it is your Spirit that will guide us. And so may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace this day and forevermore. Amen.